Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this new Strategic Narrative Underground session. My name is Guillaume Wiatr. I am the principal and founder of MetaHelm. MetaHelm specializes in helping CEOs, leadership team, and entrepreneurs build a strategic narrative so that they can take their organization to new levels of engagement, profit, and impact in their community. Welcome back and welcome if it's the first time you are joining our sessions. I meet you every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific for this free webcast. And I go over a topic that I explore, that I've been exploring through the process of writing a book. My book is a pattern language for strategic narratives. And I decided to write this book in public, which means that as I come through new ideas and new writing, I test that new thinking live with you guys every Thursday on those calls. Someone in the group, Joshua, here asked me, so when is this book going to be published? And my answer is, I don't know. I didn't set a deadline. I didn't set a timeline. And also because I still felt like as I was starting this project, I had a rough idea of what I wanted to put in this book, but there are still some loose ends. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been wondering, why is it really that I want to write this book? Why is it that a strategic narrative matters so much? Why am I so obsessed and passionate about this topic? And I came across the realization that maybe one of the biggest reasons why I want to share some practical insights and tips in a book with you guys is because when you have a narrative, you start or you build or you grow a different kind of company. You build and you grow or you start a company that puts the idea of a movement first. This idea, kind of was in the back of my mind for a while. I published this article called Story versus Narrative and Why It Matters on September of 2020. And this idea was already in there, but I didn't really pay attention to that. And then all along this journey, a few of you, Patricia also here in the call, a few weeks ago made the comment that what I was at the time talking about the origin story. And Patricia, you said, well, this reminds me of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so the word movement and the concept of movement has been kind of floating, around the work here. And I started considering it more. I started testing it also with my clients, with people I help. And everybody seems to resonate with this. It actually gives more of a reason and a way to measure if you have a good strategic narrative. So the topic for today is I'm going to name this session Movement First. Movement First because I've noticed that some organizations also do this very well. They put this idea of movement at the forefront of the way they lead their operations, the way they lead their teams. Movement first also because there are other priorities when you lead a company, and there are other things that come to mind. So all along the way, I realized that this idea of movement first might not have been very explicit. It was kind of, underlined in what I do. And as I think about it, companies that think of themselves as movement first organizations have a few characteristics in common. They promote a different view of the world. They seek to change our mental model, which means, how we think, how we view things. And I call this changing the narrative. They advertise their beliefs before they advertise their products. They inspire us to something greater than just mindless consumption. So they are very focused and very much about their purpose and the cause that they want to defend. In the recent year, they seem to capture our attention more and more. We seem to gravitate more and more. And there is data. I'd be happy to share that data and maybe publish in my upcoming emails with you. But there is proof, quantitative proof that people are much more willing to work and buy and collaborate and support organizations that have a very clear and meaningful purpose. Those companies also make us participants, and they do that very well thanks to technology. Social media plays a big role in this. It's almost like those companies depend on the capacity to communicate and to rally people with this technology. And finally, those companies that are movement first organizations, turns out, have a narrative. And good fortune, I've noticed, I have observed, and I've done extensive research on the fact that that narrative is always powered and supported by 4 stories: the origin story, the opportunity story, the perspective story, and the product story. Those companies are typically triggered by a single action from an individual. There's an opportunity that defends a cause. They have a clear and different way of engaging people with a new perspective. And they have a product or a service that help us participate. So this is really a new way for me to frame this idea. I'm still, playing with this, writing about it. But as I share this topic with you today, I'm probably going to hopefully talk less today and get your input here. I see this as almost like as an axis, a continuum of 2 things. So imagine we have movement first on the left, product first here on the right. And those 2 extremes here are not necessarily exclusive. They think about it more of a mix of 2 things. Maybe you started, on the product first end of the axis here, where you're an engineer or you notice the problem that you really want to solve, and you really focus on the technical solution to go about this. And maybe that's your passion. The product really becomes the pride, the obsession that you have. And then this leads you maybe to build a product that is so amazing that people have no choice but fall in love with it. So it's a great strategy. You could do that. And therefore the competition, the what I call the competitive alternatives in your market disappear from people's mind, because your product is just so great. It takes over the narrative about how we do something. So that would be in the left part of this model here. On the right end of this model is the movement first approach. Others companies thrive, and maybe that's how you started, because you've created a movement so meaningful and so important to people that all other competitive alternatives become irrelevant. You've set the goal to achieve a mission greater than yourself, and a mission that promotes a complete shift in the way we live. Your goal is to create swiping change. So that's why I call it a movement first, because it really has this flavor of how social movements almost work. The success is defined in terms of impact and in terms of level of change that you're able to create. The reason why I say that these 2 are not exclusive is because you can create a great movement, but if you don't have a great product to help people to act on your ideas, then it's not going to work. You have to be able to deliver on something. And equally, you can have a great product, but if you're not able to create a movement around this new product, you stay at the stage of invention, and it's hard to turn this into innovation, which means that you created adoption. So there it is for the theory. And I'd like to discuss this theory a little bit with you, and maybe let's find some examples. So when I built this model, I immediately thought about examples. I have them here on my notebook, and I listed about 10 to 13 companies I could think about. So I had some ideas but I'd like to see if that resonates with you. And as I describe those 2 different strategies here, I'm wondering if you are if that resonates with you and if some examples come to mind. So that's my question for you to do for you today. Do you feel like this way of framing the idea of a narrative is helpful? And does this help you think about examples?
I think it makes, oh, Joshua, were you going to speak? No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that, not having, I mean, like having one without the other is really kind of um, what you don't want to do. Like having both of them together is kind of like the magic mix. That's the sweet spot. That's like where the Venn diagram gives you where everything is happening together. And you had in one of your newsletters, you had cited a Microsoft report on kind of the hybrid workforce and where people were going, and something that was cited in that was really that people want to work in an organization where their work has some kind of meaning,
Yep.
and that salary is not necessarily the top consideration for working for that kind of organization. And I think it's the same thing with a consumer or a customer. It's like, that there has to be something else that compels you to choose that over something else. And then I think there are some situations where a company starts out with meaning, but then they lose it somewhere along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like Google is kind of like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the reason is because, I think that Google initially, I feel like their main thing was like making things accessible to everybody, like you could
Right.
find everything.
Right. Yes.
But now they're like monopolizing like our information,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like kind of being predatory about the data that we as consumers provide them when we are using their tool.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts to feel like, okay, we've just lost the goodwill of this organization,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm not so happy about it as a consumer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and Google. I mean, I think we talked about this just a few weeks ago, but Google started as clearly with this idea of a movement of organizing the internet's information, and I showed you the 10 things that they know to be true, which is a proof of that. Yeah, interesting. So for you, an example of a company that has probably was very much on the movement first kind of end of the spectrum is starting to shift to the product first, the way they behave, the way they make their choices and so on, and develop their product.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to have to reinvent their movement if they are going to
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
stay on the good side of consumers.
mm-hmm. Okay.
I
That's
think that's
and just before we switch to you, Josh, that's a company name I didn't have on my list, but it would be interesting to take it and run it through this model.
I think there's a really interesting example because their product has changed in some way, and well, now they have another product in their offering, and that is us. We are a second product that wasn't on their list when they started, I think, and so it's hard to
That's
deal with that
fascinating. Why do you say this, Josh? It's really interesting.
because they're selling that data. It is a thing that they sell to companies. It
Yes.
is a product that they package and sell, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Apple is trying to make like they're pushing the privacy. We're gonna be your option for privacy and these kinds of things. But that wasn't the case. So they're trying to push that so that they are distancing themselves from their competitors in that way, so they're making up a movement to sell their product.
They're making up a movement. Making up makes me think that it might not be so authentic. Would you agree
I
with
think
that?
I think that well, I think it's a shrewd decision to move in that way and champion it as if that they're doing it for our benefit. But really, I think if the cynic in me thinks that they see an opportunity to distance themselves and
Mhm.
become like Volvo, the safe choice,
Right,
and
right.
and I don't think it is as authentic as they would like us to believe it is.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
it makes me think also of something like Tesla, where I don't really know if the idea for the product came first or the idea for the movement came first there,
mhm.
but definitely they leaned hard on the movement piece to sell their product. It's hard to know what happens behind the scenes, but you can see where they pushed the movement in order to sell their product. So there's probably a lot of movements that are not authentic,
Right.
but if they act on them and they behave in the
Mhm.
way that they are saying they behave, then whether it started as authentic or not, maybe it's good enough.
What
I
the You're making a very good delineation here is what's happening outside, what is being said outside, and what's happening inside, and the importance of being coherent about those two aspects. Yes.
there's a company that makes chocolate, and I can't remember the name of them, but their chocolate bar is not elegant. It's very crazy, and
Mhm.
everything is red.
Hmm.
And their movement is to um, source chocolate that does not use child labor,
Okay.
because almost all chocolate is sourced in Africa
Mhm.
by child labor, some by people who don't get paid. It's a very, very corrupt, um, immoral kind of business. If that's your, if I mean, if your moral compass says you should not be employing children, you shouldn't have people working in dangerous situations where they don't get paid, et cetera, and then have a company make so much money off of that because these people don't get paid anything. I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember the name of the chocolate company, and it's really interesting because their chocolate bar is a normal chocolate bar is divided up into very even pieces, like all these squares that you break off.
Mhm.
This particular chocolate bar is broken up into all kinds of uneven pieces. There's nothing even in it.
Mhm.
And what they're trying to communicate is that, not all, there's not equality for all, there's not across the board equity for everyone. And they're trying to get every chocolate manufacturer to buy into a process that they've developed in order to verify that chocolate is not produced in this manner that they're against. So that is a movement. I mean, you just want to buy the chocolate bar because it's like neat
Right.
looking once you open the package, but also because, yeah, who wants child labor? Who wants to be eating chocolate that, you know, is destroying people's lives?
Mhm.
So I see that, that's one of those movement first um, things, and
Yeah,
it can be.
they made they made the decision to establish their brand, pursue this purpose of justice, equality,
Yeah.
and it shows in their branding. So we see the outside facet at least.
Mhm.
It would be interesting to maybe interview them and get a hold of them and find out how this, if first of all, if they recognize this movement first concept and see if that, because we see it from the outside, and see if it's also utilized inside to make better decisions, organize the company, be more efficient. And
Yeah, I think that that is the main thing of the
right.
CEO, and my understanding is that they have partnered with a really large chocolate manufacturer in Belgium
Interesting.
that is buying into their process. It is not the most economical way to go,
Yeah.
but it's the most ethical way to go,
Right.
at least from my understanding.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, as you described this, Patricia, I just wanted to share a few other thoughts around this idea of movement. I think what you're touching on is that if you're movement first, you are seeking to change some cultural norms, whereas those norms are social, societal, social. If they are about your industry, the market, or your organization, it could be at different levels. But I feel like the goal here is to change the way things happen. So move from one state to an evolution of that state, hopefully for something better.
Yeah, I think that they can even get to the point where they're challenging, like, you talk about challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
I mean, they're challenging the system of capitalism in some regards, how,
Challenging it to evolve.
yeah, like I don't know, that I think it sort of ties in. I mean, look at, I can't remember his first name, Yang, who ran for president. His movement was that everyone should have a minimum income.
Right.
They don't have to work. They get $12,000 a year. That's the minimum. That is based on a lot of information that he shared about, technology taking over a lot of people's jobs. There are situations where technology is replacing people.
Right.
Work is shifting in a different direction for some people, and maybe we don't need to work as much as we have been. So
which is what according to you were quoting the Microsoft report that I shared this week on my email list, and that's one of the major findings, and that's tied to the idea of the big resignations. People realize that, hey, work can happen differently. I am changing my perspective about work. I'm reevaluating my priorities. I am unearthing some of the values that I probably had a long time ago that I forgot about, and I'm changing my perspective on work. Maybe I want to work differently, less with a different group of people for a different kind of company that represent different sets of values.
right. And to Joshua's point about, what happens in the world can actually cause a company to pivot. Like
Right.
they look at what the competition is doing and go, okay, that's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because the market is full of this, and it's an opportunity to put something in the market that is is something else.
So when you become more mature, in the concept of the S curve, when you become more established and you want to reinvent and see what's next for you, what's the next stage, then this might be a good strategy to think about. That's what I'm hearing from you, Patricia. A lot of good feedback here.
Yeah.
I wanted to share a few other company names that I had thought about. So just out of the blue here, maybe older ones too. Starbucks actually, I thought, started as a movement when they wanted to recreate social connection in neighborhoods, local communities where they had those completely different. That was a long time ago, but they still carry this idea very, very much so. And when they feel like they don't accomplish this mission, they seem to have higher ability than other companies to stop and think about this and reflect and see how they could do this better. Starbucks was on my list. Another company that I shared with you that is probably not as known, but that I shared with you a few weeks ago is Archimoto, the company who produces those electric fun utility vehicles that looks like motorbike, but are just electricity. They're powered. They're electric vehicles. Let's put it simply. And I was just looking on the way they communicate outside, and they're very much about how we change the mode of transportations, how we transform our cities, and pursuing the cause of cities that are more livable, and so on. So very close to what probably a Tesla would say, but maybe with smaller vehicles. Another company I had here, let's see. I thought about Tom's, the shoe company. They do more than shoes now, but the Tom's company. In fact, I had prepped this with you to run this through the 4-story model. I want to share that with you. So this is just so we are on the same page. Can you see my screen? I don't know if you can see the right screen. That will be the good question. What do you see on the screen right now? Oh yeah, there you go. So, Tom's. That's the Tom website, and that's the founder, Blake I hope I say his name correctly, Blake Mycoskie. And in reading the website and knowing about the company, I don't know anybody who works there. I don't have any other connections than just a prospect, or I bought shoes from them in the past. This company started out of after the founder took a trip to Argentina, and where he saw that kids had no shoes, and without shoes, there are many things you can't do. Namely, you can't go to school. You can't, and it's a health problem as well. And so he built this idea that you could sell shoes, and for every pair you could give one pair to someone who needs a pair. So when I take this example and I run it through the strategic narrative 4-story model, this is my attempt at it. And if you see a way to improve it, please tell me. But this is what I would say. In the origin story is this trip to Argentina in 2006, where Blake saw the hardships faced by children without shoes. The opportunity is equity, and the fact that all people have a chance to thrive. That's really what this company is after. The product comes first. The movement aspect is really prominent here. And what we are seeing is that in the way that they've evolved, they've branched out outside of shoes. Now there's clothing, there's apparels, there's even coffee, I think, in their product line. The perspective is very clear. They even have a name for it called grassroots good, and it's really clearly explained on their website. Grassroots good is about organization creating change at the local level and driving progress from the ground up. So what Tom's does is that they give 1/3 of their profit to grassroots organizations to improve the communities everywhere. And for the product story here on the right-hand quadrant, I put 1-for-1 model. See the little R sign? It means that they've even registered a trademark for this. So it's the way to think about the product, which proves that the perspectives comes before the product. The 1-for-1 model is a way to think about products, but really what kind of product seems to be a secondary thought. I mean, I'm sure there is very clear guideline and a set of criteria. I'd love to talk to people at Tom's to find out. It feels like it's very, very thought through, but still it feels like this company could make, I don't know, could make bikes tomorrow, or could make electronic devices. Maybe, I don't know, but it really feels like this, that it's all about the impact, the movement first, and then the product in their current phase. Who knows, they might change the strategy, they might change it. But I think this is a really interesting phenomenon here that shows what happens when you have a well-constructed, well-thought-through strategic narrative. So I just wanted to share that example with you. I've got other examples that I plan on exploring and developing for the book, and also sharing with you here during those sessions every Thursday. Josh and Patricia, thank you so much for showing up, and all of you guys, thank you for watching. Any final thoughts or comments before we wrap this up for today?
I was just going to say about Tom's, what's interesting about Tom's is, like, not only did they start from a movement, but they created a movement for other companies to
Right.
follow the same model.
I so agree with you. Yes,
Yeah.
they've been an inspiration. And look
Yeah.
at us. I am inspired by what they're doing. I want to share that idea. So I so agree with you, Patricia. Great observation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, that's why I put here, it's almost like their product is not not necessarily the end product, but it's the way to think about the product. It's the model. Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate it. I hope to see you again very soon in the next Strategic Narrative Underground session. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Thanks,
welcome.
Guillaume.
You have a great day, great rest of the day, and a great summer, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks.